Survivor 47 just continues to impress with this incredible chaotic cast and some pretty wild strategy to match. Of course, in this episode, we sadly had to say goodbye to an early favorite, but there is still plenty of game to be played as we continue to watch and decipher our winner. I'm super excited to dive into this episode with y'all, but before we get started, please make sure you hit that subscribe button below if you have not already. I recap Survivor, Big Brother, and other reality shows on my channel from time to time too. Plus, it's always a good time over here. So once again, please make sure you're subscribed below for more recaps as we continue to dive into this wild season. Now, let's get started. Like in usual Survivor fashion, we are gonna kick this episode off with the Blue Tribe returning back to camp after the last tribal council. And this is where we're gonna see, the standard amount of bitterness that people usually have after coming back from a tribal. We see that Kyle is bitter because he was the one who was left out of the last vote. And on the other hand, Sue is bitter because her name was written down in the first place. Now, all of that is pretty standard, but it does show that Kyle does seem to be having a bit of a harder time recovering from that last vote, which is going to make things super duper important for Kyle when Gabe decides to reach out and extend an olive branch. Gabe kind of wants to work with Kyle, but in order to do that, he first needs to throw Tiyana under the bus and get her out next. And normally hearing something like this should be good news to Kyle, since he's both literally and figuratively alone in the game on that island. And even though Kyle really does like Tiyana, sticking his neck out too much at this point is only gonna hurt him and put himself at risk. But of course, Kyle being Kyle, he decides to do that anyway. Kyle decides to take this information right on up to Sue, his new enemy. And right off the bat, Sue is just not interested in anything Kyle has to say. And honestly, I can't say I blame her at all. After all, he did just burn her in that last vote. So from Sue's perspective, it feels like, Kyle, her enemy, is now walking up to her to warn her that her ally Gabe wants to take her far in the game. Yeah, obviously this is not the bad news that Kyle thinks it is, okay? Kyle thought he ate here with Sue, but that whole thing just ended up completely backfiring on him. And don't get me wrong, I totally get that Gabe can be a little cocky, okay? I get not wanting to completely put your trust in him.
If I could bring him into a position of stability, I don't think he would ever turn against us. I mean, shoot, I could probably call on that guy to be my limousine driver for the night after this game is over, and he'd fly out from Michigan to Baltimore and do that for me.
But it's just that right now, Sue doesn't really have a reason not to trust him. Now, we don't end up getting a final resolution to this beef, but as it stands right now, it still looks like Kyle and Tiyana are on the bottom of the Blue Tribe. Meanwhile, on the Yellow Tribe, there seems to be this growing tension, mainly between Sam and Anika, over just some general camp life stuff. They're arguing over things like laundry and sleeping arrangements. Honestly, it seems to be like your typical standard roommate drama, which I personally am a big fan of. I mean, it's like the petty little drama like this on Survivor that I love to see, especially in the camp life segments. And the best part about this whole thing is Andy is loving it too. He just gets to sit back and relax as these two just clash with each other, and Andy just gets to skate through the game. Now, we also see Andy pull this risky move of giving Sierra his shot in the dark advantage as a way to gain trust, and this was before his tribe is even in any danger at all. So at first, I'm thinking that this is completely nonsensical and unnecessary, and from the looks at it, Sierra was thinking that too. She looked so confused as to what the hell Andy was even doing out there.
Do you know?
Yeah, do you want my shot in the dark?
No.
I can give you my shot in the dark.
What?
Just to borrow it.
But to my surprise, this totally ends up working. Now Andy has both Sam and Sierra in his back pocket, which is really, really good because technically he has the majority. Honestly, at this point, I could really see Andy making it all the way through to the merge, but unfortunately, I just cannot say the same about Anika right now. It just feels like she's being set up to be the next boot in this tribe, but we'll just have to wait and see. Meanwhile, over on the Red Tribe, we're still getting a lot of similar content that we've gotten from this tribe all season long, which mainly revolves around Rome and how he's getting on everybody's last damn nerve. Last week it was about the fire making, and now this week it's about the fishing. Rome feels super entitled to this fish because he's the one that's been catching it. Meanwhile, his other tribe mates feel like he's been hogging the fishing gear the whole time, and they're not even impressed with those little teeny tiny insignificant fish that he caught. Again, stuff like this really just highlights general clashes of personalities that goes on in this tribe. Only this time is different because it's 5 versus 1. At least that's what we're told. And all of this is going to make things really interesting when one member from each tribe must now be selected to go on this special mission. And even though it looks like nobody on that red team is trusting Rome enough to send him out there, it looks like they do anyway. They send Rome out there and they let a game of rock, paper, scissors decide their fates. Kyle and Anika are also both selected from their respective tribes, and now these 3 are all going to go on a mission to complete another risk-reward style prompt. The rules to this thing are a little complicated, but basically, they each have to make a decision that will either lose them their vote or give them an extra vote in the game. Now, there is this option here to be risky and double down on your selection, but as we see, everybody in this group is just going to play it safe today and choose one time. In the end, Anika and Kyle both end up losing their votes, but they are both honest to their tribes about what happened. And out of everybody, Rome is the one who ends up winning, and he ends up winning a steal a vote advantage at that. So now Rome is playing the game with both an idol and a second vote, which is really great for him because he is really going to need it, especially with what's about to happen at this next immunity challenge. This challenge is your standard Survivor Ocean challenge with plenty of swimming involved, but during the strategy portion, we see both Andy and Rome being very, very insistent that they can go first because they can be the one to carry the team through.
No, here's what I'm saying. I'm good at every stage of this thing, I think. Here, bear with me. I think that the 2 slowest should go together.
Who's going first?
I want to go first. Rome, please, can I go first?
I could jump off the buoy, like literally jump off the buoy.
And at this point, upon hearing this, I just knew that one of them was gonna be a flop. The only question is, which one will it be? The challenge kicks off, and at first it's looking like Andy is the flop of the day because he just can't seem to make it past that balance beam. But he and his tribe are able to recover eventually, and in the end, it is actually the red team who ends up losing this challenge, sending them to tribal council for the first time ever. Obviously, this sucks for the red team, but personally, I'm super excited that we actually get to see all 3 tribes going to tribal council in a row. This usually doesn't happen this early on. Usually there's at least one team that's good enough to keep on squeaking through without us seeing too much content from them. But I really like it because it gives us, the audience, a chance to see the tribe dynamics play out everywhere, all across the game. So back at the red camp, Rome has come clean about his idol and his extra vote, so overall it's looking like he's ineligible to go this week. And even though he doesn't seem super well liked, Rome is still the most powerful player on his tribe right now. And he has his sights set on Soul and Aysha. Now, he doesn't trust either of them, but he does feel a little bit more threatened by Soul, so overall he would prefer that Soul is the one to lead. My absolute favorite part of this whole episode is when Rome goes up to Soul to try to butter him up a little bit, but Soul immediately senses bullshit and clocks Rome so bad it actually looked like he broke him for a second.
You're coming up to me saying, hey, Asia's the name.
I mean, what would I...
To make me feel good, and then it's like, hey y'all, it's Saul.
I mean,
It's a potential, right? It's a potential.
I guess, but like I just don't see the point in me doing that because I don't have a vote.
Meanwhile, Asia's name is still being thrown out there, so Teeny is doing her best to try to save her. I think Teeny kind of knows that it's down between the 2 of them, so Teeny is doing everything she can to try to see if there is any world where Aysha would be able to flip on Soul. But Aysha just doesn't want to do it. I'm just guessing that Aysha was left in the dark about how dire her situation truly is, because it seems like this conversation could have been the one to save her game. During the first couple episodes, the red team looked like it was a little bit more solidified than it actually was, because when we get to these votes, baby, we see that these votes themselves are everywhere. There doesn't seem to be much strategy or any sense of order at all, because 4 different people somehow end up getting the votes put on him. But in the end, we see that Aysha is the one who was ultimately voted out. Damn. That really sucks, and it's also kind of surprising just because it was looking like she was in such a good social spot at the beginning of the game. I just hate that this rivalry with Rome ended up getting the best of her, especially since there looked like there was a possible way out with Teeny and Kishan. But still, I can imagine it must be way harder when you can only see one small part of the story, so no judgment coming from this way. Overall, Teeny continues to impress me the most out of everybody on the Red Tribe. Like, the fact that Rome still wants to work with her after that incident last week is crazy to me. Sam continues to shine on the Yellow Tribe, and even though I don't think he has that much winner eligibility right now, I still think that Andy did impress me a lot in this episode too. And the Blue Tribe is a lot tougher to decipher for me, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Sue was the one that stood out / impressed me the most on this tribe in this episode. Overall, it's still pretty hard to decipher a winner right now, but there are a few people who I just think don't have any possibility to win, just based on the information that we're not shown about them. People like Genevieve and Tiyana unfortunately come to mind there, but hey, there is still a decent amount of game left to be played as we continue through this season. So, of course, I want to know who are some of your favorite players of this week and who's standing out the most to you this whole season. Let me know in the comments below. So far, this season isn't quite as messy as the last one, but there is still plenty of time for that to change. Of course, I'll be back here next week to recap the next episode with you all. But until then, bye.